4 disturbing true hitchhiking horror stories you need to know. The open road, a symbol of freedom, adventure, and sometimes unspeakable terror. Out there, in the vast emptiness between destinations, lurks the unknown. Tonight, we delve into the dark side of hitchhiking, where picking up a stranger or being picked up can lead to a nightmare. These are 4 true stories that will make you think twice before you ever consider pulling over for a lone figure on a desolate highway. Our first story takes us to the desolate highways of Texas, where a young woman named Sarah found herself stranded after her car broke down. Night was falling, and with it came a creeping sense of dread. Headlights appeared in the distance, offering a beacon of hope. The car pulled over, and a seemingly kind older man offered Sarah a ride. Grateful, she accepted, unaware that she was stepping into a nightmare. As they drove, the man's demeanor changed. His casual conversation turned dark, filled with unsettling stories and unsettling laughter. Sarah's unease grew with every passing mile. She noticed strange symbols hanging from the rearview mirror, and the man's gaze lingered on her with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. The man veered off the main highway, claiming he knew a shortcut. The shortcut led them deeper and deeper into the desolate Texan wilderness. The feeling of being watched, hunted, intensified. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, her breath catching in her throat. Suddenly, the car screeched to a halt. The man turned to Sarah, a grotesque smile twisting his face. He lunged at her, his hands reaching for her throat. Sarah screamed, a primal cry for help that echoed through the empty night. She struggled against the man's grip, her mind racing, desperate for escape. With a surge of adrenaline, she plunged a small pocket knife into the man's arm, escaping into the darkness. Our next story takes us to the winding roads of California, where a group of friends embarked on a road trip, their laughter filling the car as they cruised along the Pacific Coast Highway. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the asphalt, they spotted a lone hitchhiker. A young woman, her thumb extended, a hopeful look on her face. They decided to give her a lift, eager to share their adventure with a stranger. The woman introduced herself as Mary, and she fit in with the group instantly. She had a kind smile and a contagious laugh that brightened their journey. They shared stories, dreams, and laughter as the miles melted away beneath their tires. As the night deepened, Mary suggested a detour to a secluded beach she knew of. Intrigued, the group agreed. They followed Mary's directions, turning off the main road and onto a winding dirt track. The air grew heavy with the scent of pine and the distant roar of the ocean. Finally, they arrived at the beach, a secluded cove bathed in moonlight. As they set up camp, a strange feeling settled over the group. Mary seemed distant, lost in thought, her cheerful demeanor replaced with a haunting sadness. As they sat around the crackling campfire, Mary began to tell a story. A local legend, she called it. The story of a young woman who had been brutally murdered on that very beach. Her body never found. The group listened intently, a chill running down their spines as Mary described the gruesome details of the murder. As she spoke, her eyes seemed to darken, her voice taking on an eerie, hollow tone. Suddenly, Mary stopped speaking. She stood up, her gaze fixed on the dark ocean waves crashing against the shore. "She's here," Mary whispered, her voice barely audible above the sound of the wind. The group exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to make of her cryptic words. And with that, Mary vanished into thin air. Chapter 3. The Wrong Turn. In the heart of the American Midwest, a young man named David was driving home for the holidays, eager to spend time with his family. The roads were slick with the first snowfall of the season, and the wind howled like a banshee, creating an eerie soundtrack for his journey. As David rounded a bend, he noticed a figure huddled by the side of the road. their back to the biting wind. A wave of compassion washed over David. He couldn't leave someone stranded in this weather. He pulled over, rolled down his window, and offered the stranger a ride. The figure turned, revealing an elderly woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She gratefully accepted David's offer, her voice a raspy whisper as she thanked him for his kindness. As they drove, the snow fell harder, obscuring the road ahead. The elderly woman, who introduced herself as Agnes, gave David directions, her voice barely audible above the roar of the wind and the rhythmic thump of the windshield wipers. The directions were strange, leading them down unfamiliar roads, further and further away from the main highway. David began to feel uneasy. The roads were becoming increasingly treacherous, and the snow was falling so heavily that he could barely see a few feet ahead. He glanced at Agnes, but her face was obscured by the shadows. Suddenly, the car skidded on a patch of black ice, spinning wildly out of control. David struggled to regain control of the vehicle, his heart pounding in his chest. The car slammed into a snowbank, coming to a jarring halt. He turned to check on Agnes, but she was gone. Chapter 4: The Hitchhiker Who Knew Too Much. Our final story takes us to the lonely highways of the American Southwest, where a truck driver named Jack was making his usual cross-country haul. The desert stretched out before him, a vast expanse of sand and scrub brush baking under the relentless sun. The air hung heavy and silent, broken only by the rumble of his engine. As Jack approached a deserted rest stop, he noticed a lone figure standing by the side of the road. The figure was a young man, his clothes dusty and torn, his face hidden by a wide-brimmed hat. He held a sign that simply read, "East." Jack, a seasoned trucker with a soft spot for those down on their luck, pulled over to offer the man a ride. The man climbed into the cab, his silence as unsettling as the desolate landscape they were traveling through. As they drove, Jack tried to strike up a conversation, but the man's replies were short and evasive. He seemed lost in thought, his gaze distant, his fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on his knee. The only time he spoke at length was to ask Jack about his life, his family, his hopes and dreams. His questions were oddly specific, as if he already knew the answers and was simply confirming what he already knew. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the desert, the man asked Jack to pull over at a deserted diner. He said he needed to use the restroom. Jack watched as the man disappeared into the dilapidated building, a strange feeling of unease creeping over him. He waited for what felt like an eternity, but the man didn't return. Jack went to investigate, his hand hovering over the pistol he kept holstered beneath his jacket. He pushed open the diner door, its rusty hinges groaning in protest. The diner was deserted, its tables and chairs covered in a thick layer of dust. The air hung heavy with the smell of decay and something else, something metallic. The open road can be a dangerous place, especially when you're alone. These stories serve as chilling reminders that not everyone is who they seem. The next time you're tempted to pick up a hitchhiker or accept a ride from a stranger, remember these tales. Stay vigilant out there, my friends, and always trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. And if you ever find yourself face to face with the unknown on a desolate highway, remember, sometimes the safest thing to do is keep driving.